Hi there, it's Les from Hypnotherapy Unleashed, and thank you for watching this video. Welcome to this week's episode of Making Sense of Your Mind. Now, today I want to share with you probably the realization and the proof that completely changed the game for me personally when it came to overcoming depression and anxiety. We speak a lot about sort of mental health or being able to understand the mind in this channel because it's something that seems to be such a prevalent problem in today's society. And so I remember if we go back 10 years ago and I was, 7 or 8 stone heavier and I was depressed and anxious. The truth is I didn't actually know I was depressed and anxious at the time because we have some wonderful awareness going on about it today. I don't quite think we've got the solutions that come with that awareness just yet. But the awareness is certainly much higher now than it was going sort of 10, 12 years ago. And so it was only in hindsight I could say, oh, depression, anxiety. I didn't really know what it was. But when I understood later, when people started explaining what depression, anxiety was, that I realized I had it. And so I'd wake up and I'd do the same thing every day. Go to the shops, get a load of rubbish binge food, come home and wouldn't interact with anyone. I was literally the hypothetical caveman of going home, putting the duvet over my head and not interacting with anyone until the situation changed. Lied to the friends and family. Didn't want people to come over because I lived in this horrible studio flat where I haven't spoken about it in this detail before and it really is quite ridiculous, the situation. But I remember having this double bed in this one room and there was this kitchenette area. And the only way that you could actually go to the oven and cook dinner was from your bed. So I make the jokes to people where I say breakfast in bed wasn't a luxury, it was a necessity. And sometimes I laugh so hard, I cry. But no, generally what would happen is I'd have to pull down the lid and pull the pizza out and just eat it from my bed. Sometimes I wouldn't even sit up to do it. And so I started to get this belief and this understanding that started to feel truer and truer and truer. And it took a couple of years before I started to understand that this belief, thankfully, wasn't true. And so if you have this belief as well, I really hope this video at least does something to begin jarring that idea, which just cannot be true, which is that I was broken, that there was just something in my brain and body that didn't work, and that some people were just wired for happiness and other people were just wired for a life of just the mundane. And so I'd have good spikes like everyone has. I'd have the odd good day. But I'd always go back to baseline. And my baseline would just be that exact scenario that I mentioned to begin with. Going out, grabbing the food, coming back, and just being in that place. And I'd have such levels of negative thinking. Like I said, I was just ashamed. Like a lot of people are. Like around about 25% of the population are going through at the moment. And so I'd go to a few seminars and I'd feel really good and I'd feel really pumped up. But there'd still be this niggle in the back of the head saying, yeah, you can do these things, but they're just tools and techniques that will take you away from the baseline, but nothing will ever keep you there. And then it dawned on me after going through and understanding the neuroscience and the biology and the anthropology that there was something that seemed to click. There was something that, despite the fact all being quite different principles, there was definitely this overlay, this thing with almost the Venn diagram that these things all shared. And it's the idea that we're still these cavemen. And I'd kind of forgotten the understanding of the roots behind that, I've got this brain in this body and I'm completely and utterly used to this environment around me. But every cell in my body, every single neuron in my brain is wired perfectly. And so is yours. But for a society that existed more than 10,000 years ago. So there's often this comparison to the fact that we're very, very similar to chimps or chimpanzees. But the truth is that we're also very similar to another type of pygmy chimp called a bonobo. And it's fair to say that we're actually more related to a chimpanzee and a bonobo than an African elephant is to an Indian elephant. So before the coronavirus hit, I was doing talks over the last couple of years, and an example that I would give to people is if you went into the wild jungles of Borneo or Africa and you were to find some of our old primate companions, let's say you were to stumble somewhere in the world across a group of chimpanzees, if you were to take them away from their tribe and maybe get them to spend some time on their own for a while, What if you started to feed those chimps processed food? What if you started shining bright lights in their eyes all day, every day? What if you got them to stop moving the way that they were born to move? Do you think their mental health would increase or decrease? Do you think it would just stay the same? Now, when I say who here would think that their health would increase, no hands go up. Because innately we know, don't we, that once we take something that was born for one particular environment and we throw it dramatically into another, it's not necessarily going to thrive. Now, what's lovely about being a human is that we are the most adaptable species on the planet. There's no arguing that. We're one of the few mammals, at least, that can survive in every single corner of the globe because of our ability to adapt. But there's still things that innately scream within our biology. And a lot of people would say, well, we've been living in this agricultural society for 10,000 years. That's surely long enough to have gotten a little bit used to this. But if we've had the same brains and bodies for 200,000 years, and only 10,000 of those years have been spent in this agricultural setting, that equates to only 5% of the time that we've had these brains and bodies. So that 95% of the time, everything that we ever did within our brains and bodies were wired for that hunter-gatherer nomadic setting. And so, seeing as we're so similar to chimps, seeing as we're so similar to bonobos, can you see that if we were to take that hunter-gatherer nomad out of its setting, start shining bright lights in its faces, stopped it from moving as much? The average caveman, for example, would walk around about 10 miles a day. The average cave woman around about 6 miles a day. How much movement are you doing every day? When we look at the sources of where we get our food from, there was a famous dentist called Weston A. Price who would go and look at indigenous tribes and look at the kind of nutrient density of the foods that they would have. And because the soils were so nutrient dense in the areas that they lived, they found that the nutrient density within a carrot, for example, could be almost 7 to 10 times higher than the nutrients that we get in a carrot from the supermarket. So you can see that in a weird way, it's quite natural to feel like a lot of us might be broken in that stage. But the truth is that we are wired for a completely different environment. And that doesn't mean that suddenly we need to start getting naked and running across the wild plains of the Sahara anymore. But there's still certain parameters that we can begin to live in this new society so we can get the best of both. And so very often nowadays, the belief that I'm broken or that I wasn't innately wired for happiness, that faded, that died a very, very long time ago. And thankfully the same things happen for lots of my clients. But one of the things that we have to look at is if we want to take advantage of our old school caveman wiring and take advantage of technology, the moment we begin to do that consciously, something quite extraordinary can happen. Because we can take the best of those caveman roots and the best of this abundant technology to just move up our game. And it's very, very difficult, isn't it, to win a game where we don't really know the rules. So within the next couple of videos, I'm going to be showing certain parameters that I've certainly taken my clients through. I've even written a book on this before about the things that we can do, all of them being completely free, by the way, that will allow us to start to really shift our biology so that it matches that of the environment that we were supposed to be born in versus the kind of wonderful techno-utopia that we found ourselves in to be. And hopefully that answers a few of the questions as to why, if you've been eating a particular way, not moving the way that you should be and having bad sleep for a certain amount of years, of course that would be your new baseline, wouldn't it? I know it certainly was for me. In fact, if I was to really think about it, I remember that during that period, and I was, between the ages of 18 and 20 at the time, I don't think there was 1 week that ever went by in my life where I was eating nutrient-dense organic food without any processed food in there. That each of those nights I was getting good sleep because I was paying attention to my surroundings and the lights around me. There's a whole section of videos that we do here on sleep. So processed food, the sleep, that I'd been moving every day. I don't know if there had been a week where I was walking 10 miles every day, where I was getting the movement. I say movement over exercise because your body wasn't born to exercise, it was born to move. Remember, we are the greatest movers on the planet as well as the most adaptable species. Because how many other mammals that you know can climb trees, can sprint, can climb mountains, can swim, can run long distances quite like a human can? And so hopefully this has shed a little bit of a new perspective on how it is that we can start to see ourselves. Because the moment that you realise that you're not a broken human, you're just a human who moved into a different time zone, that's the moment that the game can change. And this is a perspective that really did save my life. So hopefully someone watching this, it could save yours. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know the biggest thing that you took out of this video below. I cannot wait to read your comments. I always love reading them. Thanks. Bye.